How do we validate the AI systems now? How are regulators looking into those kind of systems, and how are we validating them?
Yeah. So very good question, right? Because when you say AI, so there are two things, right? One is the example which I just mentioned. This is productivity gain, right? I'm using AI tools to do certain activities which I do today. I'm just using it as a tool, right? I'm just getting a better output faster, but that's about it. That's a use of AI. But the second use case is AI is part of the system itself, right? The software, for example, is created using AI code, right? Vibe coding or whatever method you want to do it, right? And AI is present in the system, meaning it can, you have chatbot, right? And then it can read the data, and so in that case there is a guidance agency has drafted, like Jan, which came, right? So there are key things now when we talk about validating AI system itself. There are new things which we need to learn, right? One is, it says context of use. It's like the other one where we said intended use of the system. In what context are you using this AI? Now let's use the two examples. In my example, so that company should have an AI SOP. Otherwise, I cannot use it. In my example, my company had an AI SOP where it said, hey, you can use AI for these purposes. It cannot be used for these purposes. It cannot be trained on sensitive data, for example, right? The data, training data is very, very important, right? So context of use, I should be able to define what am I using it for. That is number one. Number two is the training data itself. And this is a challenge when you use vendor products, right? Because you don't know what, so, but in ChatGPT itself, I think there is a way for them to only get trained in the internal data, right? You provide, right? They don't go outside and search things like that. So you can put some guardrails on that. And that's why I'm mostly sure all the companies are using it, right? Because especially there are a lot of patient data that we have regulations around sensitive information like the PIA, right? Patient information. So yeah, so context of use is very important. The training data is very important to understand. Like, what is this trained on? In my case, I can clearly say I fed it my own company's SOP. I did not take anything from outside. My own templates, and I create an output which is only for internal use. So I'm able to justify that, right? So the second thing is bias, right? Third thing, bias. Bias is especially valid when you use it for the AI inside the system. How do we ensure the AI is not hallucinating? How do we ensure the output is verifiable? Because it is AI, every time you run it, you will get a different output, right? And one of the key terms in our industry is consistency. In validation, right, it says intended use of the software, ensure that you get consistent results. That's why, if you know, when we do computer system validation, we test in development environment, then test environment, then prod. Why? Because we want to ensure if I give same input and test in dev and test and prod, I get the same consistent output. And that you cannot control with AI. And that is where the human in the loop concept also comes. So if you read that, I strongly encourage everyone to read that actually guidance, because it is introduce all these terms. Because when you use AI and validation and other stuff, you need to learn new things and you have to implement in new ways. Your old approach will not work, because context of use, bias, training data, all these are very important now, right? Consistent result. Now, consistent result, I think it's like a sampling approach. If you are very familiar with data migration projects, right? What you do is, let's say you have 1 million records to, transfer from one old system to legacy to new system, right? You cannot test all the 1 million. So there is a table. It says if you have this many millions of records, this is the minimum sample size you should test, and this minimum sample size should produce 99% of, yeah, exactly, right? Similar to that, there are guardrails being built, or as part of the AI framework. Most companies use a framework, I forgot the name. There is a framework, industry standard framework, which has certain elements, right, which put some guardrails on this. So if you can achieve this result for every input and show that, evidence is very important. But in our industry, they have clearly said human in the loop is very, very important, right? Without this, you cannot. So that is there. So you have the quality, or who is the final authority to always review the output before signing off. So that is how we will use AI. So this is a very developing area. There are a lot of use cases still coming up. As I mentioned, the use case which I told you is the simplest, and even that use case is not being done by many companies right now. So at least in the validation side of things, right?